One of the biggest problems emerging managers have is they don't have the know-how or the expertise on how to spend their time. They believe a lot of conventional wisdom when a lot of it's not true. So my name's Costin. I'm the founder, CEO of Dakota. Me and our investment sales team have created a show called the Emerging Manager Growth Show. What we do on this show is we demystify everything that a lot of conventional wisdom comes from. And the whole goal is for an emerging manager to be able to do more with less. And you have a very experienced team in myself, and I have each one of my team members on. We break down all the tips and tricks and techniques for exactly what an investment salesperson and an emerging manager should be doing to help grow their firm. Join us for another Emerging Manager Growth Show. This is one you're not going to want to miss. Hello, it's Guy Costin, founder, CEO of Dakota, and I want to talk about Rainmaker Live. It's a show that we go through everything that we've learned over the course of our lifetime, really, in sales and fundraising, and we share that. Think of it as best ideas, but there's a lot of myths out there that we basically unbundle, if you will. We demystify the things that you should be doing, we all should be doing to get leverage, and that's the theme. The theme is all about leverage. What can a salesperson do to get leverage? And there's a few key points that we're going to go through that are really game-changing. So you don't want to miss it. Please register below. Join us for another Rainmaker Live. You don't want to miss this episode. What is up, everybody? It's Guy Costin, founder and CEO of Dakota, and welcome to the latest edition of MasteringSalesforce.com. Joined by my colleague, Tim Dolan, who we've been using Salesforce together since 2011. Tim, welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's get after it. Well, hey, congrats on 2 new allocations, private credit.
Appreciate it.
It's exciting.
Yes.
RAs.
Yeah, it's obviously we're starting the new year here with this episode, early January, just recapping 2024 from a fundraising standpoint. We touched on Rainmaker Live, our other shows, active, very active in terms of meetings, conversations, conference calls, face-to-face meetings, but also allocations were being made. So, I mean, we're talking about Salesforce.com today and how we utilize it, but our activity reports, our pipeline, we're very excited about the fundraising environment and what we'll see in 2025.
Yeah, because what I'm always blown away by, Tim, is just the overall sort of, everyone's asking, isn't it hard raising money? Isn't it tough being out there and everything? And yeah, I mean, it's hard, but I keep seeing our team winning across large cap growth, mid cap growth, large value, UMA, international growth, Canadian public pension funds. I mean, RAs, which, you just won 2, got told just won 2 nice allocations from a private credit perspective. So there's money in motion. There's been a lot of money in motion. There continues to be money in motion. You just want to comment on that? Because I think, everyone listening here is clearly a fundraiser and trying to find tools and techniques that can help them in their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking to one of my teammates. I was like, hey, while we were just sitting in that meeting, I got 2 pieces of good news. But that was in that point in time, right?
Yeah.
As we all know, it takes years, if not months and years to get to that point, right? But I think for us, one is organizing our data properly in our Salesforce. That cold outreach is crucial, right? Yeah. So one of those RAs I didn't know 15 months ago. Now they're a client, right? Cold, just reach out to them. They're in Cincinnati and now they're a client. So the cold outreach and the organization of the data that we have in our Salesforce, it forces us to stay in front of them constantly, right? And that's that process as well.
Yeah, and I guess when you talk about winning allocations and we're trying to build new relationships, there's an enormous amount of information. I mean, look at Dakota Marketplace, our database, right? With 70,000 contacts, so much information, trying to keep it all up to date and keep track of it all is very hard. Clearly, as we always know, CRMs and Salesforce can kind of get a bad rap, which is a little bit frustrating. We see it as a critical aspect of our business to get leverage and to maybe just, because I always am a little bit reluctant when people are so surprised how committed we are to a CRM.
Yeah.
Right. But then I look at it and I just think to myself, well, how in the world can you not have that level of commitment? And everyone, I think, thinks of, you're a salesperson, they think of drudgery of entering call notes, meeting notes, meetings you've scheduled, et cetera. But it really is at the end of the day, right? I mean, we love Salesforce.
Yeah.
It is truly one of the greatest leverage points to organize just such massive amounts of information.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our listeners are users of Salesforce.com, right? So there's a lot of headaches to start with, right? The configuration, right? But let's just assume everything's configured properly, right? You've got all the organization of data, but for a salesperson, it's the leverage point, right? And it's sparking.
And let's just be, when we say leverage, we mean equals rapid recall.
Oh, massive.
So you can end up getting access to information. I was thinking of today, we talk a lot about Apple Pay, right? Where they've taken the most complex thing and made it one-clickable. And that's what we've wanted from Salesforce. How can you get recall of stuff you've done in the past, activities you've done in the past? How can you, 1 or 2 clicks, get that recall so you can take action?
Exactly, and it's protecting yourself from yourself, right? It is painful and painstaking to get those notes in, but 3 months down the road, you're going to look at me like, thank God, right? Because you're going to forget, and then there's legal pads all over your office. Everything's lost, but getting that information in one depository, right? And it's an efficiency tool, right? It causes sales actions, it forces sales triggers, right? You set reminders for yourself.
But it's really, it's an efficiency tool, but it's really, let's talk in the active voice. It's really a fundraising tool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? I mean, look, like you
I
just,
cannot do my job without it.
right.
Impossible.
Or if you were to do it, you would end up doing a lot more administrative work, looking for information, tracking information. You'd be missing stuff.
I would be a sales admin, right? I wouldn't be doing what I want to be doing, and that's out there in front of people, pitching product, telling the story, being on the road, following up, right? I'd be doing non-sales related activities.
Right, and if we look at Dakota and how we always talk about how our sales team is set up, sort of sequence of events, right? And I think it's always important that you think revenue generation, right? But before you can get to that, you need to build a pipeline. Before you get to that, you need to do meetings with allocators. Before you get to that, you need to do cold outreach. Right, so cold outreach leads to a face-to-face meeting, leads to building a pipeline, leads to revenue generation, closing business, generating revenue. So let's talk about how Salesforce plays an integral role in everything and kind of basically how we use it. Because I think it's very misunderstood. And let's talk about simply getting the meetings you've scheduled into Salesforce, okay? But let's also talk about, which I love, is the golden field. And giving you focus, okay, on maybe where you haven't penetrated yet, and we'll talk about how to create the golden field and the value and how that runs our business.
Yeah, the golden field drives penetration against your TAM. Right. So looking at an account, right, and this goes into cold outreach as well as combined with your relationships.
Let's just say an RA in Boston.
You've got
There's a customized field
exactly
at the account screen in Salesforce, at the account screen, the drop-down menu.
And it's by product.
Right? Product.
And it's the sales cycle.
Let's assume the company has one product, one flagship product.
Perfect. So if you've never reached out to this RAA, that field would be either blank or
prospecting.
Prospecting.
Everything starts in prospecting. So you have seven sales cycles.
Exactly. And then as you reach out, right, and you get feedback, there's different avenues that can go down. Not right now, not a fit. We'll never invest in your strategy. Totally fine.
Due diligence.
But you categorize that properly.
Red zone.
But if it moves into an active opportunity.
And we've identified 7 stages, right? Starting with client.
We have those in Marketplace.
Right. But just starting from the top, if you're just to write it out, at the top, there can be a client. Before that, you have finals, meaning there's a decision. Before that, you have red zone. Before that, you have due diligence. And then before that, you've gone one way or the other, long-term evaluation. Then before that, you're basically prospecting.
Exactly.
Right? So those are the 6 or 7 values that you'd have in that drop-down menu. Then the thing that I love about it is you can have 91 RAs in Boston, and you can just run a grouping report by RAA, right? Then you can see how many of them prospecting, how many you have in red zone, how many long-term evaluation. Then you're going to go focus in on those RAs where you've never been able to penetrate, and that should be the focus of your cold outreach.
Exactly.
And not have to do anything other than click, run the report.
Exactly. And it's right there in one layout, in one view. It answers the question, not only for yourself, but also a sales manager or your boss or your PM. Where do we stand with RAs in Boston? Boom.
So it can make you so being able to categorize accounts that you basically either shows, hey, I've done well here. These are everybody in red zone.
Yep.
Hey, this is prospecting. Now I know where to focus my efforts. So
it provides daily purpose on where you should be selling and focusing your time.
Yeah.
But also it provides that ability to report internally to your teammates on where you stand, your progress.
There you go. So it measures penetration rate. So you can know exactly how you're standing at foundations, endowments, RAs, family office in particular geographies. So the golden field has been nailed. I mean, I think it's just the greatest thing since sliced bread. We run 2 businesses using it. It's amazing. So, Tim, the other thing that is absolutely critical is tracking your footprints, all of your footprints and where you've been.
Yep.
And so if we think about just getting the meetings that you've scheduled into Salesforce so you can run past that, because I always think getting the meetings you've scheduled into Salesforce allows you to run past activity reports by date.
Yeah.
Right? What does that allow you to do? If you're good on the cold outreach and you're booking a lot of meetings, you're going to have a lot of past activity, and the brain can only process so much. So within one click, if you have access to everybody you've met with, and then some of those are going to translate into a pipeline, which we'll cover in a second. To me, that's, the golden field tells you where to focus.
Yep.
Right? The meetings you've then booked after you've focused on scheduling meetings with them and done those meetings, now you can focus on your past activity for follow-up.
Exactly. It's a follow-up tool. It's, again, time flies in our business, as we all know, right? And I was just in Denver 3 weeks ago. It feels like yesterday, right? But I'm gonna need to look at my past activity and be like, all right, I already followed up from Denver, right? In the meeting, coming out of the meeting, okay, I need to circle back with these folks. So it's, again, back to sales triggers. But then also in 6 months from now, right, and be like, oh my God, I thought I was just in Denver, but I should have been there 3 months, right? So it forces that as well, especially for those major metros that you have to be in, right? If you cover a lot of them, right, it forces you to be back in front of them and be like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of looking at the standings in the NFL or the Major League Baseball. You're seeing where you stand against these accounts if you enter the meetings that you've scheduled. We all want to know, one, golden field that shows you where to hunt. Then when you hunt, once you've actually gone and done the meetings, entering the meetings you've scheduled allows you to track where you've been, sales triggers, and then follow up. And then the last key component of leverage, again, allows you to take action, will be creating pipeline reports, opportunity reports in Salesforce. Let's talk about why that's so important to you and how it just saves you so much time in terms of your actions on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, the cold outreach, right, is always going to be there, right? Trying to find the new city scheduling, as we touch on in Rainmaker, but the pipeline management, right? That's what is real, what's hot, what's cooking right now, and what can I do? What can I say this week to the top of the pipeline that's either in finals, red zone due diligence, to goose them for a little next step or another response or an engagement or a call to action, right? So that's, I mean, I look at that probably way too many times a day, but that is the lifeblood. That's the revenue driver. Is the
pipeline.
Is the pipeline
sorted by
stage. Most near term to close. Importantly, those that have closed, you want near the top because that's a client service if you have that role as well. But if you're truly just new sales, sorted by nearest term to close, and there's crucial elements that you have to have in that pipeline report. Obviously, the name of the account, the contact, but we need current status and next steps. Those fields filled out. As we always joke internally, white space is bad.
Well, Tim, let's just unpack that because people like to say, how's the meeting? Great meeting. And really what you want in your pipeline for yourself to keep yourself honest is you want those 2 custom text fields that want to show literally current status and next step.
Yeah.
Right, so you're right in there just like, hey, this is where we stand. And then everyone has to meet weekly with their boss to review the pipeline. Then you're not scrambling around looking for what to do. You know, Tim, when I always, when I do those pipeline reports, I personally would take such pride in me internally having the detail, having everything filled in, not having any white space, just taking pride in that. Then all of a sudden you take pride in having that be so airtight. Then for you, it's such a more effective tool, right? Because you're missing a phone number, an email address. Like some guys I've seen, I go in there and they're like, no, it's all good. But then you see like, you go to see the best guy. And everything's dialed in.
Well, that's, I mean, the best pipelines you could send to anybody in your company and they can read it and they will say, great work. That's the response, right? But if your pipeline is a little outdated, a little blank, a little, right? That's where it's like, oh wait, I thought you met with that guy on the 12th. Like, where are those notes, right? Like, you want anyone in your company to be like, sounds good, thanks for the update.
So when your stuff's airtight like that, let's talk about tapping into the grapevine. Because I do believe Salesforce enables you to have career growth in many directions. Mm-hmm. One of them is, I call it the grapevine.
Yep.
You need your boss talking about how good you are.
Yep.
That is a critical component to career longevity. You need your boss bragging on you. Okay, Salesforce is a great way to do that when you have your pipeline reports and opportunity reports, one and the same, so tightly filled out, and you're reviewing that with them.
And your activity reports. So,
of course, your activity reports, yeah.
What are you doing? Where have you been? Where are you going? Right, your activity, and then your pipeline, right? Because you never want anybody questioning what you're doing.
But you want them talking about it.
They want you talking about, like, oh my God, he's crushing it right now. Look at his pipeline. Look at all these new opportunities he's created. Look at these meetings he's gotten in Q1, right? Like, that's what you want. The worst call you can get as a salesperson is like, hey, Charlie, the PM wants an update Friday. And you're scurrying, and you're trying to get your notes and your pipeline, like,
we just print it out, export it to Excel, and send it to them.
As long as you're in front of it and you're proactive in getting it in there. The one thing I would say is that, like, if you really want to get deep and granular and even really good, and it does take time, getting in your meeting notes in those activities, right? Because then when you go back to an account and you see prior meetings and you see everything that you've talked about in your prior meeting and you reference those, again, that's just becoming a better salesperson.
Right, but if you have to send it to a PM and someone calls you, right, and all of a sudden, and then you send over this very detailed document, and all you're doing is hitting, run, export to Excel, format it slightly, email it over. Not only do you look great, not only people talking about you, and lastly, it's so good for the individual salesperson. I always felt it was so good for me because and by the way, it pissed me off to have anything that was missing or not right. And then I just knew exactly where I stood. And then also if it's like, hey, just left a voicemail on 12/17, right? Because then I kind of know, okay, you know what? And then I'm not scrambling around. Then you're just like hyper efficient.
Yep. I mean, there's so many accounts, so many contacts, so many conversation, trips, travel, distractions. That's just work, right? Combined.
Well, it's your record of truth, right?
It's unless you're a savant, it's very difficult to remember all this stuff, right? And it's a great tool to leverage, and it's a fundraising tool.
Yeah, the opportunity pipeline report for an individual salesperson should be seen as bars of gold.
Exactly.
Right, and you're working that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. So let's hear from the distribution leaders on how they feel about the utilization of Salesforce.com.
It's another means, and probably the central means, to getting client information formally from our salespeople, our client-facing individuals. And so there's just a treasure trove of information and data that is contained within the CRM.
I am also just think that the concept of entering notes, the concept of making sure pipelines inside your CRM are up to date, all of that just becomes incredibly critical.
I talk about this a lot. I say our most precious resource is our time, but our most powerful resource is each other, right? And there's no way for us to learn if that data isn't going to Salesforce so we can analyze it. That is most important.
I love Salesforce, the value that it brings, right, from an organizational efficiency, and that it really does, at the end of the day, help you generate more revenue. And it also gives you massive peace of mind in terms of knowing you have everything in one place. Yeah. And all you really have, all you're doing is you got to create the golden field. You have to get those meetings you've scheduled into the database, get the meeting notes in, and then where there are opportunities, by asking the two tough questions in the meeting. Right? As we all know, Tim, those two tough questions, this is not a Salesforce thing, sort of, because it's a follow-up thing, but if you ask the two tough questions, those pipeline reports are a lot easier to read when someone says, hey, how do we stand with XYZ RAA? And
we laugh internally. If our pipeline and due diligence, red zone, or finals, if the next step is need to follow up from prior meeting, like that's not a follow-up, right? It should have been done in the meeting. You need to know the next step coming out of the meeting, so you have to ask it in the meeting.
And the two simple questions are asked, hey, enjoyed the meeting, do you see the strategy fitting your asset allocation model? The answer is no. You know what the follow-up is. If it's yes, then you ask the next question, do you think you'll be doing a search in the next 12 months? If they say yes, then you ask if we can be included. now you have real concrete steps to follow up and put in your opportunity pipeline report. So
I think also additionally in the pipeline report, obviously we're talking about the revenue generating ones. They're also keeping track of those that might be longer term, right? Because we do get conversations of the not now, but keep me updated. And also some headwinds you might have in your strategy. That's also a great way to collect all that information and report back to your team what's the market saying, right? What's not working? Why isn't the strategy resonating, right? So while everything might be great from a fundraising with great opportunities, tracking the maybe not nows or in a few months, years, that's important as well.
Yeah.
And those would be the long-term evaluation.
yeah, you, me, the team, everyone has so much embraced Salesforce, and you just see it in the results. And I see the best fundraising teams doing all the things that we're speaking about. In addition to, we've not even got into putting in exactly when you ask, what is your investment decision-making process, and putting that information at the account screen so people know when you log in, you know exactly what the process that they told you on how they make decisions. So, well, Tim, thanks for joining.
Yep.
And that's a wrap for another edition of Mastering Salesforce. Everyone, see you in the next edition of MasteringSalesforce.com. This episode is brought to you by Dakota Marketplace. Are you tired of constantly jumping between multiple databases and channels to find the right investment opportunities? Introducing Dakota Marketplace, the comprehensive institutional and intermediate database built by fundraisers for fundraisers. With Dakota Marketplace, you'll have access to all channels and asset classes in one place, saving you time and streamlining your fundraising process. Say goodbye to the frustration of searching through multiple databases, websites, Form ADVs, and say hello to a seamless and efficient fundraising experience. Sign up now and see the difference Dakota Marketplace can make for you. Visit dakota.com/Dakota-Marketplace today.